something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
This was a fork in the road of human civilization.
Well, g'day, folks. How are ya? Hope you're having a lovely new week. How much fun it is. Need to apologise to you for the last, few days, I guess, over the weekend. Friday. As many of you are probably aware, some of you more so than others, I guess, there is a lot of things going on in my life at the moment. Not just my life, but many of the people around me as well. So it's been taking a lot of my time, to say the least. And I have to couch what I'm saying a little bit here. I won't shortly. I'll let you know all about it shortly, but just not yet. So without going too deeply into what's gone on in the last couple of weeks, it's culminated in a very sad event, and we've lost one of our residents here. So it's just been very sad the last few days, last few weeks, really. But we're moving on. We'll smile, pick ourselves up, and keep kicking, because that's what we do. And funnily enough, there's lots of good things to keep kicking. That's me biting my tongue and zipping my lips. I am trying. My Lord, I am trying. And I've heard that from previous bosses. They say, God, Carl, you're trying. But anyway, it is how it is. So, yeah, it's been a trying couple of weeks, and more to come. No huge issues on my behalf, but there are huge issues. So I'm just trying to help where I can as best I can, and it is taking a lot of work. I've been trying to fix a few things, and I'm starting to wake up to the fact that some humans are just not destined to level up at all. And I've been struggling with the do you help, don't you help scenario. And I've been trying to help. But you get a few kicks in the teeth after a while from the people that you're trying to help, and you sort of wonder whether or not you want to help them anymore. And I'm trying to be a better person. So I'm juggling internal things as well. Oh, it's so much fun. Anyway, enough of my bullshit. I just tried to explain why I may have been a little distracted recently, and may well be for certain portions of this week. But after that, all sorts of good things to tell you, and significantly good things to tell you, I trust. I have heard from those wonderful folks in far north Queensland who have been experiencing weather. It's been a bit wet. Skipper Pete has had over 2.5 meters of water in just over 2 weeks at his place just out of Ingham. And, he sent me a message today just to let me know that things were returning to normal. It's all okay up in far north Queensland. So thanks to Skipper Pete. That's him standing in the cane field just outside his front door. All going well. Good luck to him. I hope it all does go well. All right, let's get on to some other good news for the day. This dickhead has departed the scene. Shane Patton, that is the Victorian Police Commissioner, has resigned after a no-confidence vote was held last Friday amongst the entire Victorian Police membership. The result of that gives me some encouragement that there are some intelligent people wearing the uniform in Victoria. And while they may regret some of the things that they've done in the past, they might be ready to make amends. And removing that bastard with a vote of no confidence, and he stepped down immediately today. There is no dragging out the saga. He was gone out of the building by midday. So I wonder whether or not he was put on a plane and sent to, well, he wouldn't be going to Gitmo. Gitmo's full. Guam might be a good bet. Maybe Diego Garcia, but probably Guam. Wouldn't it be nice to see him and a number of his other Victorian police cohorts, his assistant commissioners, those people in charge of the groups that assaulted the people on the streets of Melbourne during the lockdowns, particularly that police officer that choked that young lady out on the street, and, of course, the copper who miraculously managed to be found not guilty of attempted murder or any other crime when he approached a fella that was speaking to police from behind, wrapped his arms around him and threw him down with his head smashing into the floor. That happened at, I think it was Spencer Street or Flinders Street Station in Melbourne. That cop got off recently. So I wonder if the 87% of Victorian police who clearly spotted a bad seed and decided to get rid of him. You could have done this many, many moons ago, but at least you're doing it now. Got to take my hat off to you for actually doing something now. But who's going to replace him? What brainwashed muppet who is just going to keep following this sick prick Shane Patton's pattern is going to step into his role? Is it going to be somebody new, somebody from overseas, somebody from out of state? It cannot be a current sitting senior Victoria police officer, because there is no trust in, well, police broadly speaking, but especially in Victoria. There is no trust. The community are done with you. And I honestly don't know how you get to go and rebuild that. I really don't. You're going to need a lot of good coppers walking the beat, not driving around, pulling people over for no apparent reason, and just to hassle them, which happens quite a lot in Victoria. It happens a fair bit in Queensland too, I've got to say. It depends on who you are, what you're driving. I guess whether or not you've got registration plates on your car and a license, that does come into play. We had one of our own last week in Sydney who was molested by the police. She's currently sitting in a mental health ward somewhere being assessed. And we are reaching out to try and find where exactly she is. I think some people have managed to find that out. And I haven't had an update on her since Saturday morning, I think it was, or might have been Friday night. But at this stage of the game, still being assessed. So they're using that mental health thing against us quite a lot, particularly in deep state strongholds like New South Wales. By the sound of it, there might be a bit of changing, and I'm not just pointing to the fact that they got rid of Shane Patton today. There are other things going on in the background that I know about with Victoria Police that are encouraging, very encouraging. I'm not hearing any of that encouraging news coming out of New South Wales. Unfortunately, the good police in New South Wales still seem to be in hiding. Or is that waiting in ambush? I'd love to think it's waiting in ambush, but do we really believe that? And then, of course, there is the judiciary. Well, that's a whole other ballgame. I know that there are significant issues in our judiciary. They are finding significant issues in the American judiciary. And it looks like there might be some, well, you can't dismiss a Supreme Court justice in America. The High Court, however, can put them out to pasture. So there's going to be a lot of new Supreme Court judges coming into the system, because I hope, Donald Trump and his executive orders will clean out a vast majority of their corrupt judiciary. That doesn't help us at all, unless, of course, maybe we become the 53rd state. And there is talk of it. I saw a video the other day. Donald Trump was discussing Australia, New Zealand, and Canada in particular, with Canada being and Mexico. Australia and New Zealand were being amalgamated into one state, if you like. and as is the proper way. If you go and have a look at the old maps, and I mean the old maps, Australia and New Zealand have been joined for many, many moons. It's just that the Earth did a bit of a rotational shift, and the oceans covered parts of the range that joins Australia and New Zealand. That's part of what you travel over if you travel down the east coast of Australia, say to Hobart, and you'll cross that range, underwater range. So Australia and New Zealand becoming the 53rd state, Mexico the 52nd, and Canada the 51st. Interestingly, in this interview, Donald Trump referred to Justin Trudeau as Governor Trudeau, indicating that the deal had already been done. Because Trudeau, of course, is a prime minister. Now, I don't know whether or not what I was watching, I didn't pay enough attention, and it was on somebody else's system. I didn't have control of it, but I actually don't believe that was even a Donald Trump interview. I think it was AI created. But it was only one quick glance at it, so I could be wrong. There are some weird things that go on. Trump has been a busy man. Unfortunately, none of it really affects us here in Australia, although a pebble thrown into a pond does cause very large ripples, and those ripples could come our way. Our judiciary needs to be sorted out. Our prosecutorial system needs to be sorted out. Our prosecutors truly need to be sorted out. And I guess we require our police and or our military, if the police are not willing to commit to the people, to do this. Now, military law is much harsher than civilian, civil, or criminal law. Do we need military courts, as we are led to believe have happened in the United States, or more particularly in Guantanamo, where, for those of you keeping count, Ellen DeGeneres was hung one day last week. And she was a he, apparently. Who knew? Well, I think Portia de Rossi knew. Where is Portia de Rossi? Well, she's in Gitmo, but has not been, as far as anybody is aware, given a trial date, much less a sentence. So it would be aiding and abetting, because Ellen was the major problem in all of this. She was obviously Snoop Diddy's daddy's doggy, whatever his name is, his mule, if you like, and able to get all sorts of colourful girls for him, and boys, I think. So yes, Ellen gone. That's the latest news out of Gitmo. More to come. And Portia de Rossi, who is an Australian, or at least was, she's probably naturalised to American now or whatever. She's still there. If you listen or watch their social media, I think they live in the UK these days. They actually said, we're getting out of America if Donald Trump becomes president. Well, he did. And boy, has he must have writer's wrist by now, I'd reckon. He has been signing that many executive orders. They are just flying off the table in a truly amazing manner. Now, RFK Jr., who has been appointed the Health Secretary of Health and Human Services or whatever in the US, has called on him to sign another one to stop aerial spraying of strontium and barium and aluminium and anything else that could be harmful in our atmosphere or in some way blocking what's going on with our sun. That's a large part of what people believe they're trying to do. It's called dimming, and there is a movie about it called Dimming. The plan is to cool the Earth by putting a barrier between us and the sun. And if you look up on any given day, you'd be excused for thinking they've probably done that pretty well indeed. Speaking of things done pretty well, you might remember about a month ago, there was a caravan full of explosives found in a Western Sydney suburb. The caravan was inappropriately parked on a street out west somewhere, I forget the name of the suburb now. Well, at the time, they conflate the media. When I say they, the mainstream media and the government and the police and anybody else who could get a microphone stuck in front of their face conflated this caravan full of explosives to what would have been the biggest attack on Jews in Australia ever, and probably one of the biggest attacks in Australia, if not the biggest attack in Australia ever. This caravan was definitely meant to do harm to many, many Jewish people. Oh, God, the detonation radius. Oh, God, if you were standing within 40 meters of it, you wouldn't have to worry about being buried. There'd be nothing left of you to find, and you'd be at the bottom of the hole it left anyway. Oh, God, the power of this bomb. Oh, it'd just be amazing. Oh. They did mention about a month ago, somewhere right down the bottom, that there were no detonators or anything found with the explosives. So, new news out today. That's not the one I'm looking to show you. I think this is the one I'm looking to show you. The explosives in that caravan are up to 40 years old. Okay, old explosives. Not real good. Old, sweaty explosives. Not real good, but still not going to go bang without a detonator. Well, it turns out that this is a Sydney underworld gangster, old school kind of plot. This is explosives, or these are explosives that have been missing for many, 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 many years, and were being offered up as part of a deal for an organized crime figure that is being sentenced, or was being sentenced around that time. The offer was made by organized crime figures to put a caravan load full of 40-year-old explosives somewhere where police could go and collect it, in return for letting, I assume, one of their cohorts get a slightly lesser sentence. Did New South Wales Police do anything about that? Doesn't appear so. It's alleged that New South Wales Police knew of this caravan at least a week before it was found by the public. It's alleged that the New South Wales Police had been in active talks with organised criminal or organised crime figures about that particular caravan and the sentence that was due to be handed down for one of the organised crime families, groups, whatever it is, and in the hope it was going to get mitigated. It's all there. In fact, it's all right there in that story. You can blow it up and read it yourself. So, is there any apology? Is there any, oh, look, that caravan full of explosives wasn't meant to kill a synagogue full of Jews, women, children, oh, hoy vey. It was not meant for any of that. It was meant as a bribe to New South Wales Police to try and get a lesser sentence. Is a bribe the right word? Maybe not. To try and get a lesser sentence, to mitigate the sentence of one of their own. And where are New South Wales on the issue? New South Wales Police Force on the issue? Pretty bloody quiet, I have to say. Somebody who's not terribly quiet at the moment is Netanyahu. Now, there is a Jewish newspaper that has released a story that they claim is of impeccable sourcing that says Netanyahu and his Zionist mates in power in Israel at the moment have plans to attack Iran, and more particularly have plans to attack Iran's nuclear sites. Now, they are planning to do this so that they can lure Donald Trump and the US into a war with Iran. Now, Trump has already made it very clear that if he is to be assassinated by Iran, then Iran is to be left a smoking hole in the desert. There are serious now suspicions that Trump himself has been assassinated, and what we're seeing is a double or a clone or a whatever. I'm not sure. about any of that. Don't want to get confused by it. But this news is also being reported in other areas, and when I say other areas, it's being reported in Europe at the moment that Israel is set to attack Iran at any time. Now, obviously, if it's getting this sort of reporting, Israel would be stupid to attack at this time because their plan and cover is blown. But I don't get the feeling we're dealing with terribly clever people. They don't care. They feel emboldened, empowered, untouchable. And, of course, they have the world's greatest sob story to tell should you ever doubt that they are anything but all-powerful beings. So watch this space. And I think what happens there could impact or could be impacted by Kash Patel starting at the FBI, which should happen in the next few hours. I would expect by the close of his first day at the FBI office, which I believe will be today, Monday, American time, I believe the full Jeffrey Epstein flight logs will be released. And I believe that Hunter Biden's full laptop details will be following that up within a day or two. There are whispers that there might be some stories coming from these secret files, if you like, that Kash Patel plans to release. Some of those files include something to do with Julian Assange. So one can only assume it'll have something to do with the investigations that were going on into Assange after his release of all the embarrassing information in the WikiLeaks files. So some interesting things going on there. Other talks happening around the world at the moment. It turns out these two, those two are ready to talk. I think Putin's going to say, you get out. Zelensky's going to say, okay, because there's no more money coming. NATO have basically said, you're on your own, pal. Germany's gone home. France is packing up. I don't know what's happened to the Australians who are over there, but I'm assuming that they've been brought home too. America has cut all its funding to NATO and cut all its funding to the weapons programs that were enacted through the Biden administration. DOGE has found, well, I think probably approximating $2 to $3 trillion worth of waste. And a lot of that is money that was being sent overseas, specifically through US aid, going to places like Ukraine. They've also, DOGE, found some very interesting accounting anomalies in a number of other government agencies, and they are still fighting to get into the government payment system, even though a judge found in their favor in a court in New York recently. The Democrats in the House and the Senate in America are squealing like stuck pigs, trying to make sure that DOGE and Elon Musk do not get access to the payment system, because if they do, they will see where every cent of the US people's money has gone. Every cent. And that's terrifying the Democrats. You know, the Democrats that, when they came into politics had, maybe a $30,000 a year job and maybe $50,000 in savings. And when they walk out, they are multi-millionaires. Pretty good business being in politics in America, because if you're any good at it, it doesn't matter what your constituents think of you. As long as you vote the right way and do the right deals and close the right eyes at the right time, you'll be looked after. You'll be appointed, anointed. You won't be elected. You'll be selected. Or you can be dropped. very, very quickly. They do that too. Very, very quickly. I'm going to talk about gold and silver very quickly. Thanks to Ainsley Bullion, wonderful people. I was meant to catch up with Michael on Saturday morning so we could have a chat, and I had to bump that to 11 o'clock, and then we had some goat issues. Well, they weren't issues. We were getting rid of about 30-odd of our sort of wild herd. And I'd taken them up to a cattle yard, which was where we were holding them until the folks turned up to pick them up. And we expected the job of loading them to go pretty quickly, pretty easily. And it turned out that it went absolutely tits up from the word go. Should have filmed it. It was quite funny, unless you were the guy getting horned or attacked by a goat who didn't really want to be where we wanted him to be. We lost, I think, 11. They're not dead. They just escaped during the process. Some of them, my God, some of them can jump, and some of them not so much. They're the ones we caught really easily. But at any rate, those goats are now got a brand new home. And the irony, I've got to tell you, the irony is thick. I asked the lady what she was going to do with the goats. Cass has been quite adamant that the goats cannot be slaughtered. They have to go to a home, go and live on a farm, go and do something. And the lady who came and picked them up, lovely lady, came and picked them up. She said, oh, no, I rent them out to properties like this so they can eat all the grass down and not turn into a jungle. I said, well, that'd be great. The folks here will be hiring you back in 3 months, and the goats be able to hire their own goats back to eat their own grass. All part of the decisions we've been playing with in the last few days, folks, and last few weeks, and part of the struggles I've been facing. We'll bring you up to date at the appropriate time because it's not over yet. There's a lot more to come. Anyway, I was talking about gold and silver, and I was doing that for a reason. Right now, silver is at $50.94 for an ounce, and gold is at $4,562.50. Now, I want to have a look at the American pricing for a moment. Now, gold, the marker to look for with gold in America is the $3,000 marker, right? Now, if you can get the $3,000 marker, then they are in record territory. Right now, they're at $2,902.21. That's gone up $2 since I set this show up. So gold is doing bits and pieces. Silver looks to be climbing too. It's currently at $32.40 US. Now, for those of us that have silver, not gold, the marker you want in US dollars is 50, right? The $50 marker. Now, that's going to tell us, well, it'll tell us that we've got a lot more value in our silver than we previously had. But there are a few things to look for when this silver bump or this big silver jump that we are hoping to have comes our way. And there are some ways to find out or to pick when it's coming. So with greatest respect to Ainsley Bullion, and please check out their newsletter. It comes out daily, and their analysts are spot on. But I'm going to read you something here that I believe really does describe what's happening with the market. And if you've ever wondered how the silver market is being manipulated, this will help you. So there is a supply shortage of silver, and that's mainly because of the industrial applications, mostly being solar, but in other areas too. All precious metals are in sort of pretty short supply at the moment. Now, supply and demand do play quite an interesting factor in everything that we do. Silver and gold, the precious metals, are traded in something called the COMEX market. And COMEX is, in this situation, the most vulnerable of all the market agencies that can have an influence. Now, COMEX is the world's leading derivatives marketplace where they buy and sell just about everything. The reason they are so vulnerable is that if there were to be a short squeeze on silver, and that means that the banks get called in and people say, I want the hard product, and everybody says, I want the hard product. The industrialists come in and say, I want the hard product, and there isn't enough hard product to go around. That's where this squeeze happens on the market, and they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, except this will be on such a scale that there'll be no Peter to rob, and Paul will go penniless. That's essentially what will happen when the market goes up. Now, the reason that COMEX is so vulnerable, as I say, is because when the market goes up, they're the last one holding the bit of paper. They have to deliver the silver or the gold. They have to deliver the precious metals that they hold the paper for. So that they've got the worthless bit of paper, and then they've got to go and buy the hard product. So all of a sudden, the demand for the hard product of silver is going to get a lot of upwards pressure placed on it. So that'll be the start of it, though. And that will be where we see it start to rise and head towards that $50 barrier. Keep an eye on it in US dollars because it's a lot easier to think of it in that way in these terms. Now, once they reach this squeeze point where I guess things are about to burst, the supply runs out. They can't lay their hands on it. They can't beg, borrow, or steal any more of the actual hard precious metal themselves. Well, they're in all sorts of shit because they still have to meet their obligations. Now, if they can't meet those obligations, the COMEX winds up in default. If the COMEX goes into default, it'll bring the market down because the banks are so tightly tied to the COMEX that they're writing off, their losses into the silver market as well and hiding their little bits of paper that way. So COMEX will drag down the entire global banking system. So keep an eye on that. But that will only come after the price for an ounce of silver has reached $50. Now, it's likely that there is a bit of a pushback at the moment at the $36 mark, where, what did I say, $32.40 at the moment. So there's a little bit of pressure keeping it down under $36. I would suspect in the next couple of weeks you're going to see it jump through that, and it'll push through 36 very quickly, and then you'll see it'll climb very strongly, maybe to 50, but very close to $50. And if it comes anywhere close, you're going to be very happy. Don't sell, hang on to it. So let's say the COMEX is in default, the banks go down, the world is in catastrophic failure because their lease agreements for silver cannot be fulfilled. Therefore, they go down the gurgler as well. The first sign that you'll see before the price explodes, the first outer sign that we will see is you'll get an announcement that the COMEX is halting trading, right? They're going to stop trading completely. And then they'll put out they'll declare a financial emergency, and they'll put out a mandate to all brokers and dealers to restrict the sales, particularly the buying of the hard metals. And I want to talk to Michael at Ainsley Bullion. I'm sure it'd be the same for all bullion dealers, but Michael's the only one I've got the phone number to. And we'll find out whether or not that kind of thing can happen here in Australia as well. I guess any government, well, the government's not really the market, though, are they? I don't know how the market could exert such pressure here in Australia. Maybe with government help they could, or in some sort of declared financial emergency. But it would take the government to declare that, not the COMEX or the market, I would have thought. At any rate, it won't last very long. They'll realise that the demand is just going to outstrip demand, and demand is going to outstrip supply. so crazily that they'll never be even able to hide that fact. So there'll be no point. So I don't expect that craziness will last any great period of time. I did see a very interesting diagram that came out with all of this. And I'm not sure that the Ainsley boys would approve me of showing it to you. But apparently there is, in the precious metals game, there is a system that is foreseeable using a 55-year month-by-month chart. And they call it the cup and handle system. Why do they call it the cup and handle system? Well, this is what it looks like. 55-year monthly candle chart of silver. So you can see that it's really peaking high up the top to the left, then drops down and spends a lot of years very, very low, and then climbs up again, peaks and then drops down, creating the handle, if you like, of the cup before peaking again. And this blue line across the top is the $50 price point. It's going to go a lot higher than $50. These guys are talking $150 and potentially higher. Certainly a minimum of $95, but $150 or higher for an ounce of silver. That's what they are predicting when this happens. So I don't know if you're into charts and all that sort of stuff. If you are, then I hope it aids you in some way, shape, or form. The media aren't going to be telling you a great deal of what's going on, and I think people should be aware of, particularly here in Australia, what ACMA and the Australian government regulations surrounding broadcasting are. Now, this is the actual act, if you like, and they have certain codes of practice they have to adhere to, and here is one they tell is developed for a section of broadcasting industry that prevents certain things being broadcast. Now, we know that there are false news bulletins, false news stories, false this, false that when it comes to the news. One of the main things that they're not meant to do, our mainstream media, is simulate news or events in a way that mislead, alarm, or in otherwise disturb your audience. And this comes from, well, I guess probably the best example of why this law and a law like it would come into play is because of Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, the radio play that they did back in the 30s, I think it was, or 40s. And it became so real to the people listening it that they actually believed the Martians were invading and the world was at war. Now, radio isn't allowed to do those sorts of broadcasts anymore. They've got to stop and tell you every, few minutes that you're listening to a radio play. But Orson Welles was doing that as well. He was going to commercial breaks. And there was it's radio theatre or whatever it was called, intros coming back out of the breaks. So if you listen to it with a clear mind, a critical thinking mind, then you would understand that it's a play, or in our case, in this day and age, a movie. And I really do think it's a movie, folks. I really do think it's a movie. Why? Well, President Trump dishing out those executive orders. He's announced that the IRS is going to get audited. That on the back of the audit of the Pentagon, the audit of the health system, the audit of, so many other things. DOGE has been sent. It's going to be like probably the largest department in the US government, and then it'll be gone. That's the beautiful thing about it. DOGE has come into existence. It will do its work, and it will go. That's the beautiful thing about it. So anyway, Trump has announced that the IRS is going to get audited. What does the IRS do? it announces it's going to lay off thousands of employees. Trump announces the IRS is getting audited. The IRS announces thousands of employees are being sacked. I wonder if they're going to have trouble balancing the books at the IRS. And if you were paying taxes there, would you be a bit concerned? If they couldn't balance their own books, what are they doing looking at yours? I know. The US Department of Education looks can be deceiving. They appear to be stepping up and investigating 5 schools in and around Virginia, I think it is. No, not 5 schools. It's 5 school districts in and around Virginia. Now, that's Washington, D.C. or Washington area, the CIA haunt around Virginia. So why are they investigating them? Well, Trump made an executive order shortly after being invested as president that transgenderism in schools must end. Well, these 5 school districts have continued with their transgender woke programs. And now, after Trump prohibited them in schools, those school principals, those school boards will be facing very serious, I suspect, charges if they are found to be actually doing all of that. Interesting things happening, savings everywhere in departments all through the United States. The new head of the Department of Homeland Security got rid of over 400 employees today, or Friday, over the weekend. There is a large scythe going through some of these government departments, and DOGE is about to turn its eyes onto another one, NASA. I can't wait to hear about the wastage that comes out of NASA. And Musk, with his SpaceX programs, they already have a very good working relationship with NASA, SpaceX. It'll be interesting to see how Elon Musk uses the information he becomes aware of here. It'll only be publicly available information. I'm sure he wouldn't use anything he didn't find, in the public. But it's going to be interesting. Watch this space. Now, I've got to say, after all of this, why the hell don't we have a DOGE in Australia? Why aren't we even looking like having a DOGE in Australia? This guy's got a good question.
How much has the Australian government spent on pensions for ex-politicians over the last decade?
Over the past decade, the Australian government has spent approximately $350 million on pensions for retired politicians. This estimate comes from a 2019...
Well there. Do you think that's justified?
Well, do you? These people go in as average wage earners. Some of them, well, not average. If you're looking at the Labor Party, they're all friggin' lawyers. So there was no average wage about them. They weren't very good lawyers, though. If they were good lawyers, they'd have stayed there and made a lot more money. No, these ones were obviously the shit bad lawyers who got involved with the unions, who got involved with all sorts and different levels of corruption within those unions. I'm referring specifically to the red-headed clown who used to work for ambulance chasers Slater and Gordon before she was actively removed from the partnership and the building after the disgraceful acts that she and her boyfriend of the time, Bruce Wilson, there's that name again, ripped off the Boulder and Kalgoorlie Death Fund, miners' death fund. There is a phenomenal story behind the illegalities of what they did there legally, not lawfully, but legally, and the lies that the red-headed clown and her buffoon of a boyfriend who led the union, this guy is, the kind of fella who used to turn up on union sites and was the supreme thug. It was alleged that he turned up at a site, I want to say in Western Australia, with a car boot full of explosives ready to start blowing things up on the mining site. And there was another one there that I believe he was on a boat. Can't go and do shit like that on boats. Captains have all the power. It's called mutiny. You can wind up being shot for it and thrown overboard. Just feed the sharks, which may not necessarily be a bad thing. But at any rate, we need a Doge in Australia, don't we? I think that's a laid down misere. We've got to have something like a Doge to go through the waste. Let's call it waste rather than the bribes, the backhanded payments, the brown bag payments, the gifting, the donating to party causes, all of that shit where the money comes out of this hand and then comes back in this hand. It goes out this hand and then it comes back in this hand. And it's all been washed neatly and nicely and cleanly on the way through. That's how you go into politics making an average wage and come out a millionaire. If you play the game. If you nod your head at the appropriate time. If you put your hand up and say, I, when you're told to. If you're a good little lemming, you'll come out much better off than when you went in. Much better off. And some others, well, they get paid for life. Gold cards, free flights, free limos, the whole deal. Is it time that ended, folks? Is it time this waste ended? And who would we put in charge of finding it? We can't have Elon Musk come out here and do it for us, can we? Or is that what his next, business is going to be? Finding corrupt governments all around the world and pointing out where the illegalities, where the funds are going. I think the world would pay him. I know the people here in Australia would pay him to do it here, but we've got a bunch of pricks who would squeal like a stuck pig if he came anywhere near that. So, I don't know. I've been thinking about this. Who would we put up to be our Doge person? Ian says Campbell Newman tried the Doge in Queensland. Yes, he did. He did a bloody great job of it. In fact, I want to say he culled 15,000 fools out of the public service. And it was only through the unions and, well, the selection that 4 years later they shafted him and Pluckaduck got returned as Premier of Queensland. A horrid day for the state. Campbell Newman. Yes, Campbell Newman. All right, let's put that name down. What about Dick Smith? He was the only one I could come up with. Dick is all against government waste. I would like to think that Dick is for the people. Dick's a billionaire. I would like to think Dick's for the people. I've never seen him not be particularly for the people. He's a very generous man. He loves animals. He does a lot of altruistic things behind the scenes that people never hear about. What's more, I don't think I've ever heard a bad story in business about Dick Smith. That he's a horrible man or that he's a pedophile or that he, milks cows with sandpaper in his hands. I don't know. I've never heard a bad story about Dick Smith. Maybe he's worth looking at. Dick doesn't like animals, somebody said in there. I don't know. I thought he did. I saw him do a thing with penguins once, but maybe that was just to scare him away from the helicopter. I don't know about people who don't like animals. Couldn't say I couldn't trust one, but certainly the dogs. I take a lot. If I know the dog, I'll take a lot of cues from the dog when they meet somebody around me. And Kobe, for instance, Cass's dog, he is spectacular at reading people. And I've learned a lot by watching him around people. It's nice to have him around too, big boy. I'm missing him at the moment because he's off having a wonderful holiday with Cass, so down south somewhere. So he'll be back in the not too distant future, I'm sure. I'm just having a bit of a look into the chat. That's right, the iceberg into Sydney Harbour. Don't trust Dick. Now, okay, Sandy, don't trust Dick. All right, well, if it's coming from you, Sandy, I'm definitely listening to that story. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Phil met him when he worked at the airport many years ago. I gather that's when you worked at the airport, Phil, not Dick. Dick probably just went to the airport rather than worked at it. Yeah, the April Fool's joke, I think, was the iceberg into Sydney Harbour. And I want to say he had something, or maybe he didn't. Doug Mulray did the, what I think at the time was the pinnacle April Fool's joke with a Qantas crew flying, taking a jumbo under the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And they had tens of thousands of people lining the harbour waiting for this, and complete with radio phone call to the captain in the cockpit, and we're coming up on it, and we'll be getting underneath there in a few minutes. It's all going well, real flight speak, if you like. And then from out behind a boat comes a barge with a bloody huge elephant on it, the Qantas crew, and they took the jumbo under the bridge. It was very funny. Or at least it was back when they did it. God rest him. Doug Mulray, there was a talent in the game. Oh, loved him. Sorry, just having a bit of a read. Madison King. Now there is a lady I would put in charge of a Doge vote right about now, although I don't know her. I have reached out a couple of times to see if we can get her on the show. I just don't think she's interested in talking to anybody outside of her own audience, and good luck to her. She is starting the political party over there, and if I was in West Australia, I would be voting for her in a heartbeat. She is such a go-getting girl, and I wish her all the best in what she's trying to do. I hope that she gets many more people around her to support her. I hope that she manages to grow whatever she is building there at the moment into something that all people in Australia can be proud of and potentially support, even if governments in their current form are, unlawful, illegal, just corporations filled with squabbling children who lie to us at every opportunity. That bastards. Toxic Q. Your vote is for me. Oh, that's very nice. But I would need somebody with the brains of Cass to follow the numbers. So maybe Cass. Although I can think of probably a couple of reasons why we shouldn't do that too. Glenn Llewellyn. I used to know a Glenn Llewellyn. Are you the Glenn Llewellyn I used to know, Glenn? How interesting. Nick Xenophon. Ex-politicians. See, he knows about the treason. He was part of it. So I would prefer to have a clean skin in that regard. I know a man here on the Gold Coast, very successful man, owns a business, very good with numbers, and waste. That's, I guess, how he became a millionaire. So he probably wouldn't pull any punches. and would identify waste for what it is and not take bullshit from people trying to explain it away as something else. There probably are quite a lot of people in the private sector that I'm unaware of who are forensically inclined, and that's really what we would need: forensic accountants, forensic investigators to go through these links. But I think if we could get to the heart of it, like Musk and his DOGE team are in America, you only really need access to one thing, and that's the payment system. Find out where the money went and from whom there. You don't need to go and investigate every government department. You just go to the payment system and backtrack it from there. I would have thought, but I'm no... sorry, Sunflower, you've thrown me. I've just seen that. And I don't know what that relates to. Well, let's move on. Yeah, Doug Mulray was a legend in the 80s. Uncle Doug. And his... well, he had a lot of offsiders. Andrew Denton was writing for him too back then. There was a couple of great guys that came out of... well, they were in Brisbane for a while. Gibbo and Duckworth. And then Gibbo and Duck both went to Sydney. Rob Duckworth, I'm talking about. And Gibbo started working with Mulray. And Gibbo was the guy who did all the weird, funny voices and all that sort of stuff. And I think he did Funniest Home Videos for about the first 10 years of it before Danny McMaster, I think, wound up taking it over. Or maybe it was the other way around. But, yeah, Gibbo still does... Well, I think he still does great voiceovers out of Sydney. Very, very talented man. Penny Wong has a new $3 million home. Bloody hell. Oh, no, I won't say that. Get myself in trouble with the LBG ABC crew. Yeah, bring in Julian Assange, Pete says, and I couldn't agree more, mate. Although Assange seems to have broader knowledge on a global scale, he would have knowledge of some government bullshit from Australia, but he predominantly learned about European nations and America with what they were doing with WikiLeaks. Scrolling down the hill here, just seeing what else you've got to say. It's been a while since I've... What the? I love you. That's great. Dig up Don Chip. That's awesome. So maybe Glenn Llewellyn, you are the Glenn Llewellyn I know. I'm trying to think of where I would have met you, Glenn Llewellyn. In Queensland, I'm guessing, or Adelaide. That's the two places I'm feeling. I might be completely wrong. Dig up Don Chip. Beautiful work. Current government is registered on the US Stock Exchange. Yes, every government, this one and prior, have been registered on the same US Stock Exchange. There's a reason for that. What about Billy Birmingham? Yes, welcome back, folks. Here we are. Such waste. I reckon Billy Birmingham would be a bit of fun for the after party, that's for sure. Mid-North Coast. Glen. All right, well, maybe Port Macquarie, maybe Singleton, maybe Newcastle, somewhere around there. I don't know why I'm thinking of you like that, Glenn. Maybe it's just the fact that I like saying Glenn Llewellyn. It just slides off the tongue, Glenn Llewellyn. Very nice. Or you could just have Mr. Bill. Or what the? What about the Aussie Don Burke? Well, I'm led to believe that Don Burke is not in control of all his faculties anymore, which is a good thing because that makes a lot of children very safe, either because he can't get up and about and isn't mobile, or he is in some sort of home locked in. Horrible piece of filth that he is. I would love to see Don Burke have a home among the gum trees, swinging from one of them. Sorry, it's probably not the way you wanted to hear your Monday night start out, but there you go. What else have we got here? Oh, you're all having an interesting conversation about symbology in there. How nice. Oh, look at this, the Union Gap. I haven't spoken about the union bullshit going on, have I? Oh, yeah, there is a bit there, Jenny. There is an ideal place to be looking for waste. You're right, PNG, and the money that we're still forking out for politicians' superannuation in New Guinea. That's Papua New Guinea politicians. Oh, don't get me started. Good on you, J1. That's great. Yeah, and so many people who used to tell stories about driving to work, listening to Uncle Doug, and the people beside them in the cars not understanding what the hell was going on, because they'd be listening to the ABC, or they'd be, not Laws, of course, because he wasn't doing breakfast, but whoever was doing breakfast back on the other radio stations back in the day. Well, there was nobody. Mulray was so successful in that slot at Triple M in Brisbane, in Triple M in Sydney. God, get it out, Carl. And it was halcyon days. It was halcyon days. I don't know. Do you want to hear a roll radio story? It's getting a bit late in the day, isn't it? The people that owned the radio station, or the guy that owned the radio station and set up Triple M, was a legend. His name was Rod Muir. Anything went, and he wanted the best people, the funniest people, the most outrageous people, as long as they could sell advertising and, meet the loan repayments that he'd got himself in for, because it was a lot of money back in the day to set this up. They were very, very successful, wildly successful. And Mr. Muir used to like a party, and he liked boats. Still does like boats. I think he's still sailing around the Bahamas these days. He used to take the whole building out, essentially, on the harbour. Great parties, wild parties. The kinds of parties that when you're a young bloke in radio and you hear about radio ratings parties, you only dream of being invited to one like that, much less being able to work at the radio station that throws them. So when it came time to sell the radio station, Rod thought he'd been hard done by a little bit. They worked him down on the price by $1 million or something. He walked away with a phenomenal amount of money, but he was the kind of bloke who liked to make a statement. So you can imagine the situation, all these suits sitting around a boardroom table high up, overlooking Bondi and associated other areas where the building was at the time. And they've just signed a deal, made Muir and associated other partners very, very, very wealthy men. And Muir goes back behind the bar and pulls out a chainsaw and says, "Well, you bastards, I'm not allowed to take the whole place, or I'm not allowed to take the whole kit and caboodle. I'm going to take half of the table," and proceeded to saw the boardroom table in half. And the story is he took that half home and put it in a boat somewhere. Don't know if it really happened, but it was certainly one of those halcyon days. And Mulray was around for a lot of that. In fact, it was for all of it. Mulray was an absolute legend, and some of the funniest radio, even today. A lot of it's been loaded up onto YouTube. You can go and hear Uncle Doug. So go and enjoy that if that's what you're up to. I did want to talk briefly tonight about John Wilson and the coup that he claims is happening within the Freedom Union. I don't know if it is a coup. I don't know if it's not. There were claims, was it last Friday or Thursday night sometime, that John had quit the union, and there was some allegation of him cleaning out the bank accounts or having money, access to money, something, whatever. John, I think on Saturday morning, put out a video, you may or may not have seen it, where he refuted those points completely and denies having any access to the bank accounts at all. In fact, he went to great lengths to point out that the people in the office, if you like, the people who are behind this coup, had taken control of the back end of everything, the office, the web pages, all that sort of stuff. And he had taken control of the money in a way but hadn't. Got a bit confusing here. Turns out that while John doesn't have control of the money, that money is controlled by a lady who is a cleaner, a very nice lady, apparently a very level-headed lady, but she's not giving any money to the people who are in control of the union and the office and all of that. So I got from John's video, about 25 minutes long, that John doesn't have control of the money, but he does have control of the lady that has control of the money. I think that's how it worked out in the end. The people John is accusing of conducting a coup against him in the Freedom Union are still, as far as I'm aware, doing what they do. They're trying to get some middle ground, maybe trying to figure out whether or not there is any money missing or not. It's hard to tell if you don't have access to the lady who has access to the bank, and clearly they don't. And from what John said, they won't be getting any access to the money through her either, which kind of means that John's in control of the money, doesn't it? Kind of. Anyway, I don't want to labour over the fact, and I certainly don't suggest John's doing anything wrong with the money. He did go on to point out that it takes a lot to set up a union. It takes a lot of tyranny. You need to be a tyrant to run a union. Because it's tough. There are always challenges. And, as he put it, challenges from within, like those that he is calling from within the Freedom Union that started this coup, as he's calling it. So I don't know. We will wait and see. It's just a shame that it's got to go this way. So many people were suggesting something like this would happen. Something like what? Because there was a broad range of things that people thought could happen. And if I'm honest, I would say a broad range of things probably have. John, given his tyrant speech, how you need to be a tyrant to run a union, you need to be a tyrant to set one up, probably has upset one or two people inside the Freedom Union who didn't like what he was saying, wanted to put forward a different idea, or were dead set against an idea of his for a variety of different reasons. Now, that happens when you get a bunch of people together and they all get to make decisions. Funnily enough, that's the kind of thing that's happened in my life over the last few weeks. And it's interesting the kind of repercussions that it can have. I guess all we can do is wait and see whether or not these people can build a bridge. But after watching John's video, and I should have cut out, or I can, I suppose, cut out the last 5 minutes of it, where he's speaking about tyranny and speaking about being a tyrant. He is speaking also about how you've got to have an exit plan if you've got a tyrant running a union and setting them up. The tyrant has to have an exit plan. He was very adamant about that. If you don't have an exit plan for your tyrant, then the transition from tyrant to freedom movement is much harder to do. Now, I don't know if that is the case or not. I've never set up a union. I've never had to fight for a union. I've never had to fight union thugs, and God knows John's probably had to go and do all of that. I just find it interesting that even with everything that's gone on, the last part of his video is all about tyranny and tyrants, and then exit plans for tyrants. Now, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just simply drawing a comparison. It has been my experience that if a tyrant is looking for an exit plan, that exit plan generally has something akin to a golden handshake with it. Tell me if I'm wrong. There are also some questions about the building that the freedom movement occupies. I'm led to believe it's in the Santos building in Brisbane, Santos being a large oil and gas company here in Australia. Interesting to note that Riccardo Bosi used to work extensively with oil and gas companies. I'm wondering whether or not Santos was one of them. I'm also wondering how much they pay in rent to have an office in the Santos building, or if they pay anything in rent. Riccardo has an office there as well. So just some interesting new questions. And I'm sure there are very reasonable answers for them all. Do I expect John Wilson to bring me up and tell me them? No. And I certainly don't expect Riccardo to. So, but good luck to you guys if you can find that out for me. I'd appreciate it. I don't know whether the dark room has been on recently or not. I did see that he managed to get on with one of our American colleagues, a very deeply religious guy, which was interesting. If only because he had Juan O'Savin on the show as well, and Juan kicked off with a prayer, and he asked Riccardo to close with a prayer. And that whole interview was, I felt, an audition that the people in it didn't know they were auditioning for. So I think only one person came out of it really well, and it wasn't Riccardo Bosi. So we'll wait and see on that one too. But a lot of interesting things going on in the world at the moment, and mainly in America. But the snowball is a gathering pace, folks. It is a gathering pace. There is more notice being taken here in Australia, more demands for things like a DOGE person, somebody who can go through everything, analyze everything, show us where the waste is, and more particularly, hold those accountable for that waste. That's a big part of it. And if we can hold all those people responsible for the great waste of our Australian taxpayer money, then I think you can be guaranteed there'll be a lot less dickheads on the road. See you tomorrow.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!